Hello, welcome everyone to our continuation of our Heritage Month speaker series, celebrating Native American Heritage Month. So excited for our November speaker. Sally Tuttle has joined us today. And so just gonna do a quick introduction of her and hand over the space to her. We will leave some time at the end for question and answer. So if you have questions throughout the conversation and Sally's presentation, feel free to drop those in the Q&A. Or if Sally says something that you connect with or want to just comment on, because we're in a virtual space and don't have that interaction, you can feel free to go ahead and drop anything, any comments, any notes or whatnot into the chat. And this will be recorded, so it will be available. And this is our last Heritage Month speaker for this semester. We will pick back up with our different heritage speakers in February for Black History Month, followed by March Women's History Month, and then wrap out the spring semester with our Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month speakers. So this is our last one for this semester, and I think we have a dynamic individual here with us, so I'm excited to learn and be in community today with you, Sally. So just real quick, Sally Tuttle is a member of the Choctaw Tribe of Oklahoma and resides in Kokomo, Indiana, for any of our Kokomo campus friends on the call. Sally was responsible in part for the creation of a Native American Indian Affairs Commission and was responsible for the creation of the American Indian Center of Indiana. She also has fought for Native ancestors long before the creation of the Native American Graves and Repatriation Act, and has been extremely instrumental in several movements where businesses around Indiana intended to disturb Native graves or burial sites and helped in that process. Outside of all of her amazing work, she has 2 children, 7 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. So without further ado, Sally, I'll hand it over to you.
Halio, everyone. Thank you for joining. I am very honored. I'm surprised at the number of people that are joining. I came to Indiana in 1973. I met my husband at McClellan Air Force Base in California. When he left the service, he came back to Kokomo to work at the Kokomo Chrysler plant here at the transmission plant. So the first few years, not knowing anybody in Kokomo, the only people I knew was his family. And then and I'm going to skip forward to my first probably education to non-Native community was when my son was in the 4th grade and they were studying Native history. And the teacher gave my son a book that showed Native people going on a hunt and just slaughtering animals willy-nilly. So I went to the teacher to talk to her about this because I had raised the kids to be proud to be Native. Unfortunately, I did not get that experience because of Indian school. So we were kind of, the reason why we were there was not a happy story. So I raised them after being at Alcatraz with Russell Means and Dennis Banks and all of those, and hearing that we should be proud, and we were proud to be Native, and this was our land, and this was our home, and it had been our home for our ancestors for hundreds and hundreds of years. So when I went to the school, I did have a talk with them and said, you can't teach my son this kind of stuff because it's not true. It's not the way Native people are raised. So that was kind of my first experience. Then in 1989, the Chicago Indian Center had contacted me about teaching computer science to the Native population in Indiana. So I went to work for the Chicago Indian Center in 1990. They were taken over and we opened the Native American Indian Center in Indianapolis. So that's when I really started getting out and realizing that people in Indiana knew nothing about the Native population. And at that time, we were just a little over 9,000 in Indiana, according to the census. But as I started going around and meeting people, I realized that what was in Indiana was not the full-blood Native people like myself, but many, if not more. And when we started doing some calculations, we were at like 20,000 of Native American Indians and some other race. So those people weren't counted. So even today, when you look at the census and you ask about Native American Indians, it's going to say out of the 2020, like 2,600. Well, in reality, when you count in at least the top 6 Native American Indian plus other races, there's over 500,000. So, and the reason why I emphasize that is because my kids are mixed blood. So if you don't count them, then that means you're leaving out federally recognized members of a tribe out of those numbers, and they're not getting counted as Native people. So it's important for everybody to understand that there are a lot more, but most of the Native children or Native people in Indiana are of mixed blood. So when you look at the numbers, you're looking at 26,000 that are probably full bloods. So the big number difference makes a big difference is all I'm trying to emphasize. My youngest grandson, Malcolm, is unfortunately has red hair and blue eyes. So to understand about Native people, I would like people to understand they're not all going to be dark skinned, dark hair like myself. So if they say they're Native and they belong to a tribe, then please take that into consideration, that they are Native. They truly are Native. One of the other things I want to talk about is the current status of the Native American Indian population in the state of Indiana. I sit on the Native American Indian Commission. We work with department heads of Department of Education. We have Family Services. We have 4 legislators on our commission. And our purpose is to educate the departments about the Native population and their concerns. So there are 19 members of the Native American Indian Commission. We meet every other month, usually at the Idle George or on Zoom, whichever happens to be the situation with COVID right now. So we handle issues that come to us. We also have the Department of Corrections. So some of the Natives that are incarcerated have issues that we can look into. We are not a service agency. We can only make recommendations to these agencies to help us with changes that serve our people. So that's kind of the big thing that we do, but we also give out scholarships to Native American Indian children within the college environment. Last year, or this last go around, we handed out 9 scholarships throughout the state. I think there was 2 at Ivy Tech. So they go to like, the Purdue, the IU campuses. So they're $3,000 for the students. It goes directly to the student. They can pay the school, or they can pay for books with it. They do have to be with a federally recognized tribe. And the only state recognized tribe that we actually serve, which isn't really state recognized, but that we all know has been within the state of Indiana for centuries, is the Miami tribe of Indiana and Peru, Indiana. So they are not, they're an entity that we have, and the state has always recognized, even though the state does not have a process for state recognition here. So it's an important fact that we give out scholarships. We also help with programming. So if there's a Native American Indian organization, such as like if Ivy Tech had a campus that organization that only serves or helps Native American Indian children that are students there, then they could apply for a support help to put on a program to educate. So if you had, Purdue has the Native American Indian Center, so within the Purdue campus, and they put on programs and they can ask for support. So we support organizations that only serve Native American Indian children within their system. One of the other things that we have that we deal with, and that is the family services and child services. Native American Indian children are protected under the Native American Indian Children's Rights Act. And that means that if somebody has to come in and take them out of the home for whatever reason, they are supposed to go to a Native American Indian foster home. Now, we live in a state that is not dominated by Native families, so they most times don't go to Native American Indian families that are foster certified. So what we try to do is encourage the foster families that have those children to bring them or help them with the education of their own tribe so that they don't lose their culture totally. One of the other things we do is we work with legislators on watching out for legislation that affects our people and make sure that they're aware of the legislation. During COVID, we were getting messages from tribes because we have 101 different tribes represented within our state boundary. So we were getting message from tribes because some of those Native people could have applied for some like food vouchers from their tribe. They're not a lot. Some of the tribes, they were getting $50 a week, but during COVID, that was a pretty big thing because most of our population are just the working class people. They're, and some of them are working 2 jobs to, they're in the service industry, so they have to work 2 jobs to make it. And then what happened is those service industries shut down, so they had no income coming in. So we try to reach out to the tribes and say, hey, we've got a number of tribes here. So if there's any programs for your members, please let us know. And then we put it out in our out on social media so that some of those people would be able to reach their own tribes. We can't do it for them, but we do get the information and share it with the members of the Native community throughout the state. We have the American Indian Center is basically the tribal office, or not, the office that actually serves. So those that are in the under the economic standard, then they can go to the American Indian Center if they are federally recognized, and they can ask for assistance for jobs, for for training, for school. So there's another place that they can go and get scholarships from. It is a federally funded program, and you do have to go through their process. But the American Center does do Thanksgiving baskets and Christmas stuff, and then they also have events throughout the Native community, and it is also a statewide organization. So those two organizations are the only two that are here to help Native people within our state. The Pokagon band is up north. There are 3 basic bands in the state of Indiana, maybe 4. I should say 4. The Miamis are in the northeast. The Pokagons are in the northwest. The Shawnees are in this basically Indianapolis and south, maybe even Kokomo some. And then the Delaware used to be here. The Pokagons, their office is in Dowagiac, Michigan, and you can contact them by typing in Pokagon Band Potawatomi. And then the Miamis of Oklahoma has an office in Fort Wayne, and you can contact them by typing in the Miami Nation of Oklahoma. So those are the 3. Most of them are out of state. As you can see, we do not have an agency outside of the Indian Center and the Commission within the state of Indiana to serve the population. And that's why the Commission's voice is so critical in making sure that there are other agencies, there are schools, there are corporations know that we are within the state, and that there are services that they can refer Native American Indian children to. We also deal with stereotyping within the school system, and we deal with stereotyping within the general population. So, we just went through Halloween and trying to get through everybody's head that dressing up like a Native is not an honor, or what do I want to say? It's just not very appropriate. So we do deal with that on almost a weekly basis. One of the things that our office gets a call about is how to prove that I'm Native American Indian. Well, you have to identify your tribe. DNA, ancestry, whatever 23 thing does not, it may say that you have Native blood, but it does not identify the tribe. So you have to identify the tribe. Then you have to go by their rules. There are 579 federally recognized tribes across this country. Each one of those tribes is a sovereign nation. So to understand sovereign nation, it is like an embassy, a Japanese embassy within the U.S. government. They have their own laws. They have their own police force. They have their own court system. So you have to follow the rules of enrollment that particular tribe has. And all tribes are different. So that's why it's important for people to understand that enrollment is left up to the tribal entity itself. I think I've got a couple questions here. I don't know. Let me check.
You've got,
Amanda,
yep, you got one so far. When you say state recognized, do you mean that the Indiana state government recognizes the Miami and Purdue tribe, but not the federal government itself?
That is correct. State recognized, the state of Indiana recognizes them, but understand that they only recognize them as a 501c3 or a Native organization. There is no process within the state of Indiana for state recognized tribes. So the federal government's rules on a federally recognized tribe is much more intense. So they do not have federal recognition. The Miamis of Indiana are the same as any nonprofit 501c organization. I hope that answered your question. Yes, the Delaware were here. They were over in Muncie, Anderson area, the east side of Indiana. Is there Delaware currently here? Yes, there are several Delaware descendants that still live in the state of Indiana. And I know several of them, but their tribal office is actually in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. That's where they were removed to, and that's where their new basic reservation is. So they are here, and they probably don't look like Native people, but they are here.
Going back to the state recognized tribe, I'm gonna kind of reorder these questions. So you'd mentioned that Indiana doesn't recognize some tribes, but does any state recognize tribes or just the federal government?
The state only recognizes the federal recognition. Even though they give out money to the Miamis of Oklahoma because they are a Native group that most of the Native people in the state are aware of. So, you know, they apply for grants and they get grants to help them keep going. But to tell you the truth, the state only recognizes the federal government, the federal recognized tribe members.
Okay, we're gonna hold the rest of the questions. So I want to make sure you get through some other parts, and I'm gonna reorganize them for you. So keep the questions coming. If you want to send them to me directly, DM them, if that makes sense, or put them in the Q&A. This way I can kind of organize them for Sally to get your questions answered. So either send them to me directly or put them in the QA versus the chat for everyone. Okay, continue.
Was there any other questions? Oh, there was one about the sports. What is your thoughts about the sports team using nicknames like Indians and Braves? Most of the Native people that I have talked to around the state, Indians, we don't like. There isn't another ethnic race referred to in a sports environment besides the Native community. They think that it is an honor, but their stereotyping pictures is offensive. So I could tell you that myself and most of the people do not like it in the state of Indiana. The Braves, the Cherokee tribe in South Carolina, North Carolina, and the Carolinas, they said it was okay. They represent more of that area. So that's one thing that Indian tribes, according to our way of thinking, I don't know. The history books always talk about the tribes fighting against tribes. Well, in today's environment of Native communities, we try to band together. We try to support each other. So even though the Cherokees have said, yeah, Braves, go ahead and use it, none of the Native community is going to speak out against it. But in this state, we are going to stand up and say, please do not use Indians as a sports figure, sports name, sports support. And we would like you to change it to something else more appropriate. That was one of them. I don't know if I answered your question, but in this state, we don't want it.
The next question is, when you say Delaware, you answered that one, right? The Delaware and Muncie? Okay. Are the Pokagon folks not considered a nation?
Are what? I'm sorry, I
The
didn't hear that.
Pokagon tribe, is that not considered a nation? Maybe what's the difference? Maybe that's
Okay, Pokagon Nation, it is a nation.
nation versus
Pokagons-
tribe kind of.
Yeah, each tribe is basically has their own identity name. And it probably is. It's Pokagon Band of Potawatomi is what they use, and that's what is on the Federal Register for them. So and understand the difference between a tribe and a nation. And there's it's like the 50 something states, 52 states that is in the United States. So Pokagon is just like the state of Indiana within the Pokagon Nation. There are 12 tribes within the Potawatomi Nation. There are 14 within the Sioux Nation. So, but when the federal government removed all the Native people to the state of Oklahoma that was east of the Mississippi, they named them nations. But like my tribe, it's the Oklahoma tribe, the Choctaw tribe of Oklahoma, but there are 3 different tribes of Choctaws, one in Louisiana, one in Mississippi, which is our homeland. So understand there's a big difference between nations. Pokagon is a tribe within the Potawatomi Nation. Then the Oklahoma Miamis, they claim that they're the only Miami tribe, but there is another branch of Miamis in Kansas. So be aware of those other tribes that are out there. I know it gets confusing, but our population is not the easiest to understand. That's why I have people ask questions.
Yeah, no, this is great. We've got lots of questions pouring in. So another question is around the term Indian versus Native, Indigenous. What is the preferred term? Is there a preferred term? And could you talk a little bit about terms?
Well, I think right now people are using indigenous people of the US. And that means that they are Native American Indians that have always lived in the United States, but understand that there are indigenous people of America, or North America, and that includes south of the border. But I prefer just a Native American Indian because that's who I am. That's the way I was raised. But the newest term I've heard is indigenous people of the US.
Okay, you mentioned earlier in your talk about the Native American Indian scholarships. If folks wanted to get more information on that, where would they go?
All they have to do, let me get my card for a second and I'll give you the number.
Okay.
To get information about the scholarship, you need to call our director down in Indianapolis, and her phone number is 1-800-628-2909. It's a toll-free number. And Lisa would be glad to help you. She's the director of the Native American Indian Commission. So, and I'm looking at this one as, what about the name Indiana? Indiana was named Indiana because it's called the land of Indians. Before it became a state, it was totally Native American Indians lived here. The rich farmland, lots of woods, plenty of water. So it really wasn't a name that we gave it.
Native American meeting up.
But it was named after Indiana came from the name of Land of Indians. And are we planning on changing that? No. There are just some things that we are not. I mean, we're pretty proud that it's Indiana because it stands for the Land of Indians. Oh, there was a question about DNA. Again, I'm going to tell you that if your DNA shows up as Native, please contact the tribe that you think that you are affiliated with. I can't tell you that DNA is correct or that it's verifiable, but talk to the tribe that you think you are with, and then go from there and follow their lead. Usually it's the enrollment office. I can't say every tribe uses a enrollment office, but most of them do.
Sally, there's some questions around increasing diversity in different departments, particularly this is the Department of Construction Technology. How would, if we have like staff or faculty on the call that want to increase diverse students into their programs, do you have any suggestions about how to increase like targeted enrollment with Native Indian students?
Getting students, our biggest problem right now is getting the high school, the high school programs to understand that we do have a scholarship for students. So for anybody that's in the college recruitment process, contact Lisa. Know that there is a process that students have to apply for a scholarship, but make students aware that there's a scholarship for them. And contact the Indian Center because they also have funds for scholarships. If you are with a federally recognized tribe, even though it's not within your state, contact your tribe. And I'm going to go back to an old saying that I'm sure all of you have heard before. All they can do is say no, so at least ask and see what they can help you with. I have two of my grandchildren going to Purdue. I had two that graduated, and all of them had applied through the tribe, through the Choctaw Nation, and got money. It's not a lot. I think the most they got was $200, but $200 is a lot when you're a student. So we give out the $3,000. The Indian Center gives out funds. I don't know how much they give out. So, you know, in today's age with education and its cost, I tell students all the time, Have you looked for scholarships in your field? Some of the tribes, if you're going into the medical field, they will pay your entire thing as long as you commit to come out to the reservation and work in the clinics for 2 years. So, that's a big chunk of money right there to give up 2 years of your life of working in a clinic serving your own people. So, that's why I tell students, check it out, find out. All they can do is say no. But it takes the college recruiters to make them aware of it.
We have another question here. As someone who is a part of the Kiowa, I hope I'm saying that right. Kiowa tribe of Oklahoma, and is also planning on becoming a high school history teacher, how would you recommend going about teaching history while also going through the state and federal standards?
Well, the thing that I can emphasize is there are, as again, several Native American Indians within the state. There isn't a county, and I am going through the 2020 census right now. I have not run across a county that does not have a Native American Indian person in it. So one of the things is, if you're Kiowa and you know your traditions, you know your customs, then talk to them about that. Let them know that they do have a Native person standing in front of them. If you don't, then find out. Take the time to learn about your own tribe, at least some of the history, and then make a visit home. If you're from the Kiowa tribe of Oklahoma, then make a trip home, visit the tribal office. It's well worth it. The other thing is, with the Native people that are around, bring in some guests. I don't know too many Native people that won't go to the school and talk about their heritage and talk about their way of life. And the only thing that I ask is just for them, because they're, some of them are taking days off of work to do you a favor. So at least offer to give them some gas money so that they can make the trip, especially if they're traveling a long distance. And don't assume that everybody wears their regalia every day. I only wear my regalia when I'm going to dance at a powwow. So don't think that they're going to come in looking like the Hollywood Indian. How's that?
That's a really good point. How can we raise awareness and celebrate the heritage of the tribes of Indiana?
One of the things that I encourage for the tribes in Indiana is, number one, go to the tribes. If you want to teach about the tribes of Indiana, go to the tribal websites. If you can't go to the tribal websites because not all of them have tribal websites, then you could probably go and, well, the best thing to do is call Lisa Welch, the director of the American Indian Commission, and she will give you names and numbers of the cultural people of those tribes that are listed in the Federal Register. Okay, or call the Indian Center, and they will also assist you. Especially about the tribes, because I know that the Delawares were up here in August and they visited some schools. They came up from the tribal office. The Shawnees, there are several Shawnees throughout the state. So, that's not a problem. There's several Pokagons throughout the state. There's several Miamis throughout the state. So teaching about those tribes should not be a problem, but invite them in or call them and ask them to help you because you want to teach about one of the about their tribe or one of their entities.
Okay, this next question is about land acknowledgements. What do you think about land acknowledgements being in people's bios, particularly non-native people, putting them like in their bios or signatures? This individual says, I've been wondering if this is something that Indigenous people actually want non-Indigenous people to do, or if it's meaningful or not.
I really don't have an opinion, and I don't know. Are you talking about like farmers that are turning over their land to
No, like people saying that like we acknowledge that this land originally belonged to the Miami tribe that is now occupied by Ivy Tech Community College.
Well, I think there has to be that acknowledgement. Here in Kokomo, we're working on a program because the last reservation in the state of Indiana was right here in Kokomo. So we're working on a program to bring that awareness to the community that, look, you know, you have a piece of history of Howard County that's important. So I think land acknowledgement and where the indigenous tribes came from is very important, because the tribes call this their homeland. Just like I call Mississippi, it's our homeland, because that's along the Mississippi Basin is where the Choctaw tribe always lived until the removal. So I think it's important to acknowledge that Native people lived here way before Columbus landed on the East Coast, who was lost, by the way, and that they were farmers and they lived off the land and they prospered off the land and they traded off the land. So I think it's important that everybody understands that Native people, you know, there were several tribes that came through Indiana. There were several tribes that lived in Indiana, the Weas, the Piankashaws, and it's because of the rich land. And that's the only reason why they were removed, is because they wanted the land.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the preservation of Indigenous languages? What can we do in our daily lives to help preserve these languages? How can we help in a respectful, non-possessive way to help tribes restore usage of their native tongues?
Well, number one, you need to talk to the tribes, because every tribe has a different set of rules for their assistance. But if you want to try, and I really like that ideal, except for I'm going to emphasize that we have a huge population here in Indiana. And even though I like supporting the tribes, I like it better if we're supporting our own residents here in the state of Indiana that are Native people. And for that, I would tell you to call the Indian Center and talk to them how you could support the programs that they're trying to put together for the Native people. So, but for the real question here was supporting the tribes, supporting their language, supporting their programs. I'm going to encourage you, you need to talk to the tribes themselves. You need to talk to someone within the tribe. So if you're going to talk to the Pokagons, call up to the Pokagon office and talk to them, and they will guide you in what's best for them. Again, I'm going to emphasize 579 federally recognized tribes across this country. I couldn't begin to answer for all of those. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I think it also leads into this next question about how non-natives can be allies to the community. And what I'm hearing you say is talk to us, talk to the Indian Center, talk to Lisa, and find out what programs are happening, what initiatives are going on, and support those.
And I'm going to add one other thing is if you're interested in a particular tribe, try to learn as much as you can from them. Again, if you know of a tribal entity that you would like to learn more about, then you might, ask the Indian Center, do they know of any, let's say, Sistenwalkton Sioux. It's part of the tribes of the Sioux Nation. If you want to know about that tribe and about their language and about their customs and stuff, you need to seek out a Sistenwalkton Sioux. Get it straight from a Sioux. If you can't get a hold of anybody at the tribe, or you can't find a website that's particularly from the tribal office, there's a lot of websites out there, but I'm going to tell you, please look at the tribal website first and ask for their assistance. I know there's a Kiowa gentleman down in Kentucky that used to run the AIM here in Indiana, and he's Kiowa, and I used to refer to him, tell people if you want to know about the Kiowa, you need to talk to Albert. So, it was just one of those things. You might ask another Native person, hey, do you know a Lakota Sioux in the state that I could talk to? So that other Native that you might know may have a connection to someone else. We're a pretty small community in the state, so we know a lot of Native people throughout the state.
There's another comment / question here. Thank you for answering all of our questions. Folks have learned a great deal from today. Is there one or two things that you want to make sure that those listening today learn from this conversation, walk away from this conversation? Oh, we lost your face. I think the camera dropped.
Okay, wait a minute. I had to adjust the sound. I couldn't quite hear. There we go. Okay, now what was the question again?
So is there one or two things that you want to make sure that this group walks away knowing as a result of our conversation today?
Well, I think the biggest thing is I want everybody to understand that not all Native people look like me, and that there are over 500,000 Native people in the state of Indiana. Not all of them full blood, but they are of mixed blood. And for the Native people, please contact the Indian Center. Let us know that you are here, and if you need help, then we can try to assist in any way we can. The commission meetings follows, because it's a state agency, it follows the open door policy. Our next meeting is December 15th, I think. It's on a Wednesday afternoon. So at 1 o'clock, usually at the Idle George, but if you want to attend one of the commission meetings by Zoom or at the Idle George, then you need to contact Lisa at that 800 number and let her know. And then there are activities throughout the state that are going on. Powwows, we have powwows. We used to have about 92 a year throughout the state, and COVID has made a big impact on that. So we haven't had as many. I know Anderson had theirs this year. The American Indian Council had theirs this year. Pokagon's canceled theirs. So The Miamis canceled theirs. But look for that kind of information, and you can also get that on the American Indian Center website. Now that's the center, so their website should also have a list of the powwows going on. Right now, powwow season's over, so you're not. It won't start up until probably April. I think we see our first one in April. So, but visit some of the. Visit the Idle George. It's probably the best representation of Indian people across the state right now.
That kind of leads into the second question. You mentioned the Idle George, and there's a question here about visiting places to experience the culture. Are there other places or programs? You mentioned powwow season. It starts in April. Are there other places or suggestions for people where people can go and learn and experience the culture?
Well, I think the Idle George is probably the best place. Let me think. The Pokagons, which is their cultural center, is in Dowagiac, Michigan, but what's that? Maybe about an hour and a half. No, wait a minute. It's 2 hours to South Bend, 45 minutes. Maybe it's about a 3-hour drive to Dowagiac, and they have a cultural center about theirs. I don't know because I haven't visited. I haven't visited the Miamis of Indiana. They have a little museum there about the Miamis of Indiana, but I don't know that there's another tribal entity in the state that emphasizes just the native culture besides the Idle George. And there probably is. I mean, you're from all around the state. It's not something that I always visited. So I'm really not. There was one over in Terre Haute that supposedly was supposed to represent Indian people, but it was banned by the Indian people because it was such a misrepresentation of our communities around the state. So I can't even suggest that one. I don't know. Maybe somebody else has someplace that they visited. We do have a list at the commission's office of places teachers can take classrooms to learn about Native people. So you might ask Lisa about that also, if that's something you want to do. And these are sites, and as well as videos. And I think we also had another list on books that teachers could use in their classrooms. So that was a list we did about 3 or 4 years ago with the commission.
All right, Sally, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I kind of want to turn it back over to you. And if there's any other things that you wanted to share with the group, or that you had planned to share with the group, to be able to do so.
I think we pretty much covered everything. One of the things I would like to say is I'm really honored to be able to talk to all of you. If there's any questions, please do not hesitate to get a hold of Amanda, and Amanda has my information, and she will, and I'm sure she'll be able to give the information, or if you have questions that you would like for her to ask me. And I want to emphasize, there's no dumb question out there. There's nothing that I haven't already heard as a Native person in the state. I learned a lot when I was at the protest with Dennis Banks and Russell Means, and that is that Native people, most of all, because many of us have been hiding in the woodworks, many of us did not have the opportunity to be proud to be Native. So when you run across that person that says they're Native, please make them feel proud to be Native. Make them feel that they have something that many of the other people don't have, and that's they're on their homeland. You know, this is the Native country before it was the U.S. So they need to be proud of that. And I don't care if it's, 132nd Lakota Sioux or something, they've got some blood in them that they should be proud of, and they should be learning about that. In saying that, also, there's a lot of people that are also Irish, and they're English, and they're African American. We have a huge population of African American, Native American Indians. So we have a huge population. So, study both of those and be proud of both of whatever else, or if you have 3 different lineages. But what I'm saying is, don't lump Native into one shoebox. Again, 579 different federally recognized tribes across the country. So find out which tribe you're from, learn it, be proud of it, and let people know.
Wonderful, Sally. Thank you so much for taking the time out to meet with the Ivy Tech community, and excited to kind of have you back, right? Since you said you worked at Ivy Tech for so long, so kind of welcome home in that way. And the chat is blowing up. Folks have learned so much today. So thank you for spending the time with us and educating us so that we can do better and be better in creating awareness around communities that we may not be a part of. And for our Native Indigenous folks that are on the call, like being able to see someone and see you and hear from you and have that sense of pride. So thank you again, Sally, for spending some time with us. Thank you all for being on the call today. Again, this is the last of our Heritage Month speaker series for the fall, but you have my contact information. Watch the Ivy Tech Diversity website for the series that will pick back up again in February of 2022. So thanks again, and we'll see you all later. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you. You all have a good afternoon, and don't work too hard.
All right.